Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Go Beyond. My name is Alyssa Robinson. I am the digital strategist here at Treach, and I am here with our senior pastor, Reverend Daniel Humbert. And every Monday and Wednesday at 12:30, we come on for a live conversation that digs deeper into the message from Sunday, the sermon, what we talked about. And so this week was the first Sunday of Lent, and our Lenten worship series is all about fasting. And so this Sunday, we were talking about fasting for freedom. And I'm sure that Daniel will tell us a little bit more about what that means, because our first question today from our huddle guide, which you can find at tmumc.org/stories, is why is fasting helpful to faith?
Yeah. Well, first of all, golly, kudos to a whole bunch of people last week who probably fasted without even realizing they were fasting, right? Whether it was fasting from electricity or water or other kinds of things. So I do hope everybody's all right and making their way back. I know Alyssa's one and others who've had, water damage and or pipe freezings or all that kind of stuff. So everybody, please know you're in our prayers. And golly, if we can help in any way, please don't hesitate to check in with us or let us know, because we'd like to help if we can. But in response to the question, what was it again? How was fasting helpful to faith?
How is fasting helpful to faith? And maybe you could give us an overview of what fasting for freedom means.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of things. So fasting is throughout all of Scripture. I mean, it's identified in the Hebrew Scriptures and in New Testament multiple times. And I'll just remind folks that they can go to tmumc.org/fast to find out some of those scriptural references, to find out some great ways to fast, ideas about fasting, and why it is indeed a deeply spiritual thing. And just by way of reminder, we are talking about spiritual fasting, not fasting for health purposes. That's a great thing, and certainly don't want to discourage that, but that's not what we're talking about, right? So there, just to make that distinction. But fasting for freedom is kind of what I identify as the foundation to fasting, and that is that we want to fast in order to get freed up from bondage to things like materialism or consumerism, or even the concept of consumption in the Western world, where just, man, we have such free access to food, to all kinds of opportunities, and we need to find freedom from kind of self-absorption and this whole sense in which because we have capacity, we tend to just shy away from fasting because we can access whatever, right? And I get that not everybody can, but certainly generally speaking, we can. And we need to, fasting as a spiritual practice of abstinence helps us to better open ourselves to a relationship with God. And ultimately, that's kind of the freedom we're looking for. And so spiritual fasting is a way to help develop deeper relationship with God by sort of emptying ourselves of something, whatever that is, food, behavior, habits. And once we sort of free ourselves up, then it opens us to a more rich and full relationship with God. That's the desired goal of any form of spiritual fasting.
Mm-hmm. And I shared in a podcast that was released about a week ago, answering the question, why is fasting helpful to faith? In the past, for me, it hasn't been, because I didn't allow it to be. I made fasting about me, and then I was frustrated about how it didn't bring me closer to God, when I think in the podcast I said I hadn't invited God into my fast. But this year I'm trying to do my fasting a little differently. So as far as the question, why is fasting helpful for faith? I don't know why. I'm figuring it out right now for the first time. Maybe at the end of Lent, I'll have an answer to this question, at least for me. But yeah, I'm just kind of exploring this in a new way for the first time.
Yeah, and I'm glad for you, and I'm glad for anybody else who's in that position. And I want to highlight your podcast because I really appreciated your transparency and your willingness to join the journey, right? Because that's what it is. So I encourage folks to listen to it.
So our second question today is, how does prayer help our fast?
Yeah, well, so I feel strongly like the first two questions are really related in a lot of ways. So almost half of the time that fasting is identified in Scripture, it's directly tied to prayer. And so in part what that means is, man, they are like related, right? And so it's probably a good idea that while we fast or during our fasting, whatever their form is, that we spend time in prayer as a way to connect with God, because that's another reason, we'll talk about this in a couple, 3 weeks, that we want to fast is to develop a relationship with God. And so prayer is all about relationship, right? Prayer is all about God, help me out, or God, this is great, or God, I'm grateful for that. It's all about opening up. And so fasting, in my opinion, fasting kind of focuses us, right? I'm going to empty self so that God can fill this gap somehow. And in that focus, if I can pray, just connect with God, talk about, God, I'm hungry, or God, I'm really missing this thing, or God, I'm grateful that you're providing in this gap, or whatever, man, that conversation can make a big difference. It helps to support the freedom and the commitment and the connection and even discernment. A part of there's this huge component in fasting to try to discern God's will or to try to discern some decisions. And so if I pray, there's probably a greater likelihood that I'm going to either notice something God's trying to point out to me or hear something that God's trying to say to me. And I don't mean that audibly, but, through relationship and connection and stuff. So prayer, both scripturally and practically, is really closely tied to fasting.
Yeah. And I've already seen that happening in my fast. And so
Cool.
I joked around with Pastor Nick. I messed up my fast on the very first day because I guess Ash Wednesday is the first day of fasting. My personal fast this year is I am not watching TV until 10 a.m. every day because I've gotten into this really bad habit of when I first wake up, the first thing I do is turn on the Today Show and I just watch the news all morning before I get into work. So on Wednesday morning, when everything was shut down, I was like, I have to watch the news. Like, I have to see what's going on with traffic and what the weather is happening and all of that. And I confessed to Nick later that day. I was like, well, day one, I'm out. But I've picked it up again since then. And I think that prayer has always been a big struggle for me. Because I find it boring, to be honest.
Yep.
And I think that I've always done prayer in a way that doesn't suit me, which is why I found it to be boring. But I have started doing guided meditations in the morning where I'm just listening. And instead of watching TV, I'm listening to this guided meditation. And it's actually not even a Christian meditation.
Yep.
It's through a wellness app that I have.
Yep.
But it has helped me to start my day with honesty and authenticity and to be able to admit to myself where I'm struggling and as a result admit to God where I'm struggling. And one of the things that has been echoing in my head over the past week is I have stopped seeing the good in people. And I think that that is becoming a huge intention for me and almost a mantra that I've been repeating every day is God, help me see the good in your people.
Yeah.
And it's just something that has, I don't know it. And so I've been approaching prayer in a different way than I was raised to approach prayer.
Yeah.
But I think something's happening.
That's cool. Hey, that's neat. I appreciate you sharing that. And I hope that people are listening because I think that's a great way to help folks realize the integration that can be a part of that. That's neat.
So our last question today, what freedom are you seeking from your fast? And I guess if you're willing, share your fast.
Yeah, so my fast this year is I'm abstaining from lunch, the meal and sort of a designated time in order that I can either pray, read scripture, or engage in intentional relationship with others. And the reality is the first couple of days I did the food part, I abstained from the food, but I didn't do the other part. And so I think that was Wednesday and Thursday. And then Friday, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to be doing this in addition, right? And so I tried to re-engage that. And so that's been helpful. So for me, the freedom is kind of twofold. One is I love food, and I've been known to just eat, not because I was hungry, but because either it was time, like lunchtime, or man, I'm bored. And so that's one of my go-to things is to just eat, right? So one of my freedoms that I'm searching for is just not such a reliance on food that's not necessary or needful, I guess is the way to put that. And then secondly, and really more importantly, freedom for a deeper relationship with God. If I can connect with people in intentional community or focus on prayer and reading of scripture, then and I know this personally, then that helps me in my relationship with God. So that's the freedom I'm looking for, is a deeper relationship with God.
Well, I think for me, it has made my days start so much more calmly, rather than being inundated with national news.
Yeah.
Like, even though all I was doing was waking up and turning on the TV, it automatically made my morning feel busier and like I was in a rush. And I would sit down and watch the TV for 15 minutes drinking my coffee in the morning, and it wasn't a restful time because I was watching the news. And
Which
in
is
the
never
first
restful.
because I don't know, it didn't seem to me like it was taking up so much room,
Yeah.
but it really was. And so I've only been doing it for a few days now, but my mornings are so much calmer and restful. And I like, by the time I got to work today, I've already felt like I've had a full 2 hours to myself
Isn't that
before
cool?
I even got here. And I always felt rushed before that. And like, the world was just spinning and spinning and spinning. And I was just taking in so much information. And now I'm getting to have a little quiet and reflection. And it's a great way to start the day. And that has freed me up in so many ways.
Yeah, I think, man, that's a powerful testimony to that. That again, if we didn't choose to abstain from, in your case, television or the news, if we didn't choose to abstain from that, we would never really know the freedom that it brings, right? And
And
now,
I'm not perfect. I will admit, like, I really struggled this morning. It's easier on work days, right? Because I'm out the door by 7:30.
yeah,
But on Friday and Saturday, because those are my days off, I was twiddling my thumbs at one point, like pulling out cards, like trying to figure out, okay, how am I filling this time with more? Because I did my scripture, I did my prayer, I did my meditation, and then I was like, oh, it's only 8 a.m. Like, so it's rough, and I'll probably slip up from time to time when my finger starts itching or
well,
I need something to fill the time, but I'm trying really hard not to.
yeah, well, and so I appreciate again the transparency is helpful because we're all, every last one of us, we're all going to fail a few times during the fast, right? And the goal is not to beat yourself up, but to rather give yourself grace and to recognize that God is still with us and that God still wants the best for us, and that and God's grace is sufficient, right? So um, it's important to recognize that, because if you're like me, I know we're different in lots of different ways, but I too fall prey to this. Well, golly, if I screwed it up or if I messed up this one time, I don't want to keep going because I've messed it up.
Well, I messed it up on day one and just decided, but then Pastor Nick was very sweet and he said, well, if you want to get technical about it, it doesn't start until Ash Wednesday service. So I was like, all right, saved by logistics.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, let's encourage folks to try the fast. And again, friends, if you haven't started, it's never too late. So if you don't know yet what you're fasting for, continue to just kind of, ask God, and then start when you're ready. Don't think to yourself, golly, if I didn't start on Wednesday, I shouldn't do it. Or if I didn't start on Sunday, I can't do it. You can start at any time. So
Yep. And I want to encourage y'all to go to tmumc.org/Lent. We have all kinds of resources to help you grow in your faith during this Lenten season, from how to get started fasting to audio devotions and Lenten podcasts. We have at-home kits that you can sign up for and get ways to interact with worship from home if you are worshiping from home. And so we have so many ways for you to connect with us. So again, tmumc.org/Lent to find all of that information, and let us know how you're doing in your fast.
Absolutely. I'd love for y'all to share. Absolutely.
All right. Bye, everybody. We will